Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on what side of the pond you're on, and welcome to an extra special edition of Across the Pitch. My name is Phil Kennedy, and I'm here with my co-host, Tony Robinson, where today we're joined by one of the chair people of the Accrington Stanley Ladies Football Club. That is Heath Groves, who, along with his wife, Kelly, are the engines that drive the ladies team. And first and foremost, Heath, thank you for taking time today to chat with us, and welcome to the show.
You're welcome, mate. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hi, Heath. This is Tony over in Toronto. Recently of the Hindburn area. I've just been back a little while and looking to get back in the saddle with Phil and getting some interviews under our belt. And no better way to start off recording again and a subject that I think is something that we've not paid too much attention to, and we should do more of it, and starting today, and that's with the women's team. So we appreciate you doing this and look forward to learning more about the women's setup at Stanley. No worries.
I noticed a Hindburn twang in there, Tony. So a little Canadian Hindburn going on there. That's quite good. That very cosmopolitan.
Yeah, it's sort of I call it mid-Atlantic, but we're the Canadian is coming back more now that I'm now I've been back for a couple of weeks, so we'll mosey on through as they say, and looking forward to chatting with you, Heath.
Yeah, when you heard Tony a week and a half ago, you didn't even know he was Canadian at all anymore. But like Tony said, I mean, the ladies team is something that we're really excited to increase our coverage of. We did, of course, have Bryn Tracy on the show last year and learned quite a bit when we talked to him. But before we get started with talking football in general, tell us a bit about yourself and, what led you to initially get involved with the Accrington Stanley Ladies Club.
Right. Well, this is quite a lengthy segue, to be honest, because we've been around here for about 7 years.
Okay.
And involved around the Stanley space in the Hindburn area. So essentially, I'm also the CEO of Sundown Solutions, and Kelly's the Chief Operating Officer. And we exited Microsoft in 2015. And part of our company growth was to clearly grow our organic reach to get developers and so on and so forth. However, because we're in the IT game, we were pretty hesitant to use online social media for advertising, so on and so forth. So the idea was that any pound spent on advertising and marketing should have a local and dramatic effect. So we started to look at sponsoring local grassroots teams and so on and so forth. It's part of our campaign called Heart and Soul. Okay, so we actually started with Stanley men's team, sponsoring a couple of TV boards. About 7 years ago was our first one. And then every other year we used to sponsor a couple every now and then. And then we became club sponsors for another grassroots team in Hindburn called Clayton Park Rangers. Ended up becoming full club sponsors for them. And then my daughter started playing football for what was Accrington Stanley Ladies and Girls about 3 years ago. And then we started to become club sponsors there. And then they asked for people to join the committee. So Kelly said she'd chip her hat in and so on and so forth. And it came all the way through from there, really. So we've used our capability from a Sundown perspective to help sponsor across the whole Stanley family. And over time, it became evident that we needed more hands-on and time and expertise on the ladies section, which then became the women's team. And that's really our evolution in how we got started. And now I think we're about 2 years in now.
Well, and does it your involvement, does that sort of seem to coincide with the growth of the sport? Especially in the UK, because I think in the last couple of years or more, it's really taken off and it's unprecedented growth. So you're joining in along with a lot of other people that are catching on to this popular part of the game.
Yeah, well, I like to think that we were the forerunners for it. That's what I like to think. Because essentially we knew the women's Euros were coming, and we could see the standard increasing across all the girls' coaching all the way through to the women's team. And it's one of those aspects where the majority of men's teams and everything else are going to need a professional women's team sooner or later over that period of time. And you've got that structure where you have to go from grassroots to semi-professional to professional and walk all the way through. And that takes time. It takes that most valuable of commodities, which is time, people's time and expertise. So we looked at this 2 or 3 years ago with it and understood that we could have a dramatic effect if we could help out and assist, because clearly we could do the digital side of everything for them. And it just seemed to be a good match at the time. And well, if you're going taking your daughter to 2 football games a week, you're going taking your son to 2 football games a week, you're involved, aren't you? That's it. Your whole weekend's there. So the reality is, we've started to push forwards from that. We've seen it professionalise over the last 2 years. Don't get me wrong, the Women's Euros has been absolutely amazing, but it's actually been the uptick since then that has been the really dramatic story across the whole piece. So, for instance, when we first got involved, I think there were 56 players, and then inside a year, I thought it was about 9 months, they were up to 84, and now at the moment, I think we stood at 179 at this moment in time. So, you know what I mean? It's like, it's exponential. You know what I mean? It's crazy, just like the uptick. And our job and our mission is to make sure that that's sustainable continuously all the time,
With Bryn being on board, was he on board when you guys got involved, or were you part of the process of bringing him on board?
No. He was involved when we got on board, and we sat down and had a load of strategy sessions with Bryn, talking about and where we were going with our 5-year plan and what we should be achieving and where we should be going and what we could do if we did things a certain way and how far we could get. And I remember a very specific conversation I had with Bryn where I just literally asked him, right, if we back you, if we do everything from a professionalised point of view, how far do you think we can take the women's team? And he just said all the way. He didn't even flinch. He just said, we can take them all the way. And at that point, it was like, right, okay, game on. Let's see what we can do here. You know what I mean? Let's see how far we can go. Why not aim for the moon, Tony? Why not aim for the moon?
So that was the right answer, is what I'm gathering.
We can't argue with that, can you? I mean, there's one thing about being confident, but there's one thing about having a set goal and the confidence to get there. So obviously, and when we talked to him, Phil, you will agree, he was such a well-spoken and positive person that I can't think of anybody better than you've got really in and around the area to run this program.
Yeah, he was absolutely tremendous when he came on the show, and you could just tell how much passion he has for the game.
Yeah, he understands it inside out, and he understands the mentality between the tiers as well. And a lot of the women's game, certainly in the open age section, it's all about the mentality and the positive energy that you bring to the pitch. And all of that type of stuff. And Bryn's excellent with that. We use the term a great man manager. Well, in this case, it's a great woman manager with these players, so it has a good dramatic effect.
Well, let's skip ahead a little bit and talk a bit about the team on the pitch. So now the first team currently plays in the Northwest Women's Regional League Division 1 North, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, and that's your second season in that division?
Yeah, and that's so the Tier 6, we're currently starting third. We've got 3 games in hand. Across the people that have started above us, key thing there is that we've actually got games in hand against those, but we've also beat the 2 teams above us as well. So it's been like a max, like a really congested period of fixtures for us with cup games as well.
So yeah, I'm looking at Hazelington is right now in first, and they've played.
What was that, Phil? What did you call that?
I'm sure I probably.
Darren's going to get you for that one. It's Haslington.
Haslington. Okay, well, Haslington, they've got 11 matches played at 22 points, and like you were saying, you have the 3 games in hand, 8 matches played, 15 points. So I mean, even if you were to get 2 wins and a draw, then you'd be right level with them.
Correct. And this is the whole point of this season. We don't really know how far we can go. All we know is that if we take the shade off and go for it, you aim for the moon. If you miss the moon, you're still at the stars, aren't you?
Yeah.
So and that's to us is the right attitude to have, as long as everybody's enjoying themselves and we're playing decent, attractive football that people want to come and watch. Then everybody's a winner. Really. And that's what it's about, really, growing the Stanley brand across the whole piece.
Yeah, and you had a big signing, Sadie Mitchell, suffered a broken leg. How is she doing, and how has that affected your the team?
So this is that whole piece about when you start to up the level, you start to get the higher level problems, and one of those higher level problems has been injuries for us. So the first thing we did as a professional women's team a semi-professional women's team, or turning into it, was to lift what we call the pay to play. And everybody said that, well, is it free to play for Stanley? Well, the reality is it's not free to pay for the first team. The first team players don't pay because it's an honour to wear the badge. But the upside of that is they're absolutely committed. Now, because they're absolutely committed, they're training harder, everything is more intense. So you naturally pick up more injuries as you go. So now we're dealing with that as well. And with Sadie, she dropped down to join us because she enjoyed it. She saw what we were doing and she really liked what we were doing, and she took to it really quickly, and she was on fire. I think she got 2 hat-tricks in her first 2 games. She was literally on fire. And then just heartbreakingly, she went in for a 50-50 tackle and had a double break. The shin. And the actual tackle itself, was not a foul. Me and the referee watched it back and said it's just one of those things where 2 players came together. But luckily, they were fantastic responders on the pitch. The paramedics treated her fantastically. But I'm pleased to report that she's doing really well. She's doing really well in rehab. She doesn't have a boot on anymore. Her dad's got to stop her from getting on that exercise bike, so hopefully she'll be back early next year. And we know she's ready. She's raring to go. She's absolutely raring to go. But, that's the standard, because Sadie's an ex-Scottish international. She's played 3 times for Scotland. She was actually on the bench with Chloe Kelly at Everton 2 years ago. Wow. So that's the level now that we're starting to attract. You know what I mean? 'Cause with the women's game, it's not just about the tiers. It's about how you look after them, how you approach everything as a club, what the setup is like, and it's the environment that we're providing for these women that they're really enjoying.
So one thing I wanted to ask you a little bit about is the pyramid and how all of that works. Now, like I mentioned, you're in the Northwest Women's Regional League Division 1. This is Division 1 North. This is your 2nd season there. What kind of division did you guys start off in, and how many promotions have you earned over what amount of time?
So we started off in the division below 2 seasons ago, and then we were promoted to Tier 6, and we've been in Tier 6 now for the last season and then this season, and that's over the last 3 years. So the reality is now we have a 5-year plan to try and get to Tier 4. Now, we're in League 1 now. If we manage to get promotion, we go to Tier 5. From Tier 5 is then into Tier 4. Now, Tier 5 is a very, very tough league, but for us, Tier 4 is that's that next really big step, because currently in the moment in Tier 4, you've got Wolverhampton Wanderers, you've got Burnley, you've got Huddersfield, you've got all of those in that Tier 4 piece, but we're not unrealistic. We're crawling at the moment. Yeah.
Is Tier 4 the point where it would no longer be regional?
Tier 4 is still regional. Okay, but it's usually the big guns in that region.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
because we're in the Northwest, there's a lot of big guns around here.
Yeah.
How many teams get promoted from Division 1 North to the Premier League, which is then the Division 5?
1.
1. Okay. So you have to win the league to go up.
Yes, you do. You do, which is why you've always got to be realistic about your aspirations, but equally you've always got to aim for the stars, haven't you?
Well, that's a tough order there, huh, Tony?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously there's some big names that Heath mentioned, and as we see across the board, really, where teams clubs are getting behind the women's game, and more teams are growing. And I think this is I think one of the positives is that the Stanley women's team is getting in on the ground floor, and and I think the big thing is what he touched on, is being able to attract people that like what the program is about. And I mean, you mentioned you brought Sadie in. I'm assuming there's plans to bring in people of similar caliber for next season. Is there, Heath?
Absolutely. So recruitment's always one of those continuous things as well. And obviously we'll have players that go. We'll have players that go to a more professional club, that we'll have players that sign for academies and things like that. But equally, we'll be looking to attract the good talent. But our big coup de grace, our big selling point is the fact that we've got a lot of natural talent coming through now. So, for instance, at the moment, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 junior teams, all the way from under 11s all the way through to under 18s. And with the Community Trust as well, they have the little kickers program. So essentially in Hindburn, if you're a junior, if you're a junior girl in football, we can take you all the way through into the reserves and then into the first team. And we've got some phenomenal players that are below the age of 16 that are coming through in the next couple of years. And when I say phenomenal, I mean absolutely phenomenal. And there's a rule that always gets my chagrin about women's football, and that's the fact, and I understand why it's there, but women under the age of 16 are not allowed to play in the open age team. I know why it's there, whereas boys under the age of 16 are. So we've got a couple of absolute superstars that are coming through, and we're hoping that we can cultivate that and give us a long, sustainable fruit basket of players to pick from. So
the one thing that we hadn't touched on, and when you mentioned you guys with Sadie joining the squad, are the contracts that they're signed similar to the men's game?
So no, they don't sign specific contracts. What they actually do is they sign for you on the whole game system, and then they're registered to you as a club because you're not in that professional element yet. When you move through the tiers, and that's when you start to sign them on professional contracts when they come in. So, for instance, any one of our players can possibly go off and play for one of the WSL academies. And that can happen at any time, and that's just part of the pyramid of how it works. Once we get into the next tiers up, once we get to tier 4, that's when we start issuing things like professional contracts, semi-professional contracts, that type of stuff.
And that's when if you develop a player, that's when you would get rewarded. If somebody is sold on, you sort of get for a transfer fee or whatever. Is that you're not quite there yet?
We're not quite there yet. And to be honest, the women's game as a whole, below the top 3 tiers, it's not generally there yet as a whole. However, it's going to get there very quickly, and you can see it's going to get there very, very quickly because there's some phenomenal talent flying around at the moment. I was having this conversation the other day to somebody, and if you were looking at someone like Chloe Kelly, if you took gender out of it, would Chloe Kelly be able to play in a League 2 team for a men's team? And that's when the penny drops, when some people will go, well, yeah, she probably could, you know what I mean? And those types of things. And I'm not saying that the men's and women's games will ever merge, but what I'm saying is actually the talent is starting to come to an exceptional level now, and sooner or later they're going to twig onto this.
Yeah, I mean, over here in the U.S., I'm thinking our women's team may beat our men's team sometimes.
Well, I think one of the things we just haven't made, well, we've touched on it, but I think all 3 countries, England and Canada and the U.S., have all got successful women's programs at the national level, all winning competitions, medals, and the such, which is, I think, I think that speaks volumes to, especially North America, where it's such a big game, and so many participants, that the success, the women's in Canada as well, they've had more success a lot, obviously, than the men's team, but to the point where the coach of the women's Canadian team now is coaching the men's at the World Cup. So it's been used as a stepping stone. But I just want to acknowledge that in all three countries, the women's game is really having success.
Especially here, I remember the last Women's World Cup. I would say that there was probably more excitement for the Women's World Cup than there is now for the Men's World Cup. It's an amazing thing to see. And one thing I wanted to kind of circle back for, did I hear you correctly that you said that there's a total of 11 squads?
Yeah, let me just count these up for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, there's actually 9 teams, and we have 2 teams as well. There's 11 all the way through. So it's the whole junior pyramid.
Approximately how many players total do you have in the system?
So at the moment, I think it's 174.
Wow. That's
yeah. So that in itself causes issues and problems, or has caused issues and problems, because it's a natural expansion of all of the girls' teams. So clearly we need places to play. And also we need dance partners. We need other teams to play as well. So we've got to be very mindful of the leagues around us. And then also that brings issues with referee availability and pitch availability and so on and so forth. So, it is expanding, and it has expanded massively.
Are a lot of the teams based out of the hub up on Thornyholme Road?
Yes, we are. So we're based out of the hub. We also do some training at Acros. We also do some training at Dhaka, which is in Bali. The first teams play across Winnie Hill, Padiham and the hub, as do everybody else, because primarily there's just too many of us now. We've got to fit in the slots that we can be allocated around there. So it's a nice problem to have. The league probably don't see it as a nice problem to have. But it's one of those where actually you just get too big for everything. You've got to play where you can fit in.
So now I imagine that most of your players probably come from the Accrington, Hyndburn area. Are you starting to see more interest from players wanting to travel from other parts of the country to play for Accrington?
So at the moment, there's an interesting stat that over 80% of our juniors are from the borough of Hyndburn. So we're talking about that 174, 179 between it. Over 80% are from the boundary of Hyndburn.
Wow.
We do get players that come in from Burnley, from Blackburn. So a couple travel from Bolton, maybe one from Stockport, and so on and so forth. But now at the moment, we've got a lot of localised talent here, which is fantastic. It really, really is. And that's our job, to turn that demographic into the fourth head of the Stanley family, and to allow that demographic to come in, really.
I mean, in the recruitment, does that fall under Bryn's responsibility, or does he have somebody that does that for him, or works with, or how does that work?
Well, so from a recruitment perspective, I'll be honest, Bryn's a very big driving force for the first team. He is very, very good in that regard. And I think people generally see the setup that we have and how we approach everything, and then naturally gravitate towards us. From a juniors perspective, or the junior teams, clearly we're out and about. From a community perspective, people know the brand. The shirt giveaway that the men's club do is absolutely phenomenal. And the young girls that come in that want to actually train, enjoy themselves, and naturally progress through. So from a first team recruitment perspective, I probably say Bryn and John Harrison are very good in that regard. And it's all about building that established brand that people generally see and want to be part of.
One thing that I wanted to ask about is how much is there interaction between the ladies' team and the men's team? Do you scrimmage against each other or anything like that at all?
No. Separate training slots, separate pitch sizes, that type of thing. I think we all share different training venues. So, for instance, the men also train at Across and the Hub, and we also train at Across and the Hub, but totally different slots. They don't intermingle, primarily because they're two different types of games. Clearly, the men's team is exceptionally fast, and at the League One level, is very, very high. Our level is getting that aggressive, fast-paced, attacking football element through to it. So it'd be remiss if we started to mix them and start to play them against each other. However, the majority of our girls' junior teams also play the boys' teams. And that's the localised boys' teams around the area, like Clayton Parks, the Globes, the Spitfires, all of those types of things. So we do mix under the junior piece, but when it comes to the first team, it's completely separate.
And you play your first team matches at Padiham, which is for Phil. It's only maybe 10 minutes away from Stanley, from the WAM Stadium. I would take. It's not that far anyway. What I'm trying to get at is, Padiham got as I say, a stadium that the ladies use now, and I wanted to ask Heath, how's that working out for you playing there?
So that's worked out really well for us, because the key thing is when we started to play our matches at the beginning of this season and the end of last season, we started to attract fans, and fans need facilities and so on and so forth. But you just can't go to a big stadium. You need small stadiums where they can accommodate, and our team can get used to playing in front of a crowd, and we can build up that fan base. So Padiham's been absolutely perfect. They've been really, really good with us. We use two main stadiums. We use Padiham and we use Winnie Hill. Now, Winnie Hill is literally only a mile away down the road. It's actually in Clayton, is Winnie Hill. And that was one of the first grounds that the men's team used when they started to come back from the resurrection. So there's a lot of affinity there. But yeah, the playing in the stadium has been a phenomenal piece, because what we've seen is our girls have got really good at getting used to having the crowd there, pushing them on and being that 12th person. And that's been really, really good for us. But equally, it's been good to build that up as well. Because the first time we played in the stadium, we actually played at Gig Lane against Bury at the end of last season. And I think it was the first competitive football match at Gig Lane for 3 years, because the fans had bought Gig Lane back.
Right,
yeah. Women versus us. And there were nearly, I think, there was definitely over 500 people there in the stand, but they were just opening up stands there for it. And we were winning 2-0, and then Bury scored. And clearly the stadium erupted, and you could see it shake our girls. You could see everybody, it threw them off because they weren't used to that type of thing. Yeah. And we ended up losing the game 3-2 over time. But that's when we realised that actually we now need to start progressively building this fan base so they can get used to it. So that's where that came in. Of actually, we've got more fans now, but we need to safeguard our women to make sure that as they come through, they understand what it's like playing in front of paying supporters. Because the reality is, the big thing that everybody forgets is if somebody's paying to watch you play, they now have an opinion and they will voice that opinion. You've got to get used to that. And if you're not used to that, then you can get them stuck.
Yeah, I think that's something we take for granted is fans watching and paying to watch, and obviously a lot of these girls are not used to that, and this is something that is now, with the growth of the sport and become more popular, fans want to watch the women's game, and so was it an adjustment for some of these girls, or are they sort of taking it
Absolutely.
to Yeah,
it's been a big adjustment, and we've worked on that on and off the pitch as well. There's been a lot of mental coaching and discussions around it as well. Just getting them ready and battle hardened for that type of scenario where, you're focusing on the pitch in front of you regardless of what someone else is saying. And it's worked well for us. Now, what we've noticed in our league as well is now we're playing in a stadium. A lot of the other teams are now playing in their stadiums. So, for instance, Workington, they now play in their stadium when they play us. There's a cracking incident against Preston North End. We played them the first game of the season. And I think it might have been one of the first times that, certainly in this season, that they were playing in a stadium. And I remember their right back, one of our Stanley fans was throwing some constructive criticism at the right back in Preston North End. And that right back turned around and started having a go back. There's constructive criticism, and our player just ripped past her. And it was that moment of, what are we doing? Right. You know what I mean? So it's not just an adjustment for us, it's an adjustment for everybody playing in front of that type of constructive criticism, shall we say.
One of the other things I wanted to talk to you about was just the first team on the pitch. And for folks that are in Accrington and lucky enough to go see a game in person, who are some of the players to watch for, leading scorer, team captain, things like that?
Oh, Sana Mendy, definitely. She's a phenomenal striker. I think she's potentially going to, hopefully, be certainly at the top, somewhere in the top 3 or 4 at the end of the season from a goal scoring perspective. If everything stays well, if everybody stays there, hopefully, touch wood. We've got Megan Rodriguez. She's absolutely phenomenal at the moment. We've got Bryn's daughter, who's actually the captain, Meg Tracy. She's just coming back from a broken foot. Then we also have Abby Rogers as well. She's the vice captain in there. Izzy Cook is phenomenal at the back. She is absolutely amazing on the ball. Holly Martin's just starting to come through as well. Honestly, it's like the names are just starting to really cement themselves around the whole team. But we've got a very, very solid defence backed up with a decent midfield that is then going through to what I consider to be a phenomenal attack. And when Sadie was playing in that 3 between Sadie, Megrod, and Sana, we were just absolutely hammering everybody. And it was phenomenal to watch. But clearly, because Sadie's now out, we have to change and align everything that we do as we go forwards. But they're some of the key players to watch as well. And we've got a couple coming back from injury. At one point, we had 12 injuries. Now we've only got 8 injuries.
You get getting some back on the pitch. How long is the season? How many games do you play, and when does the season start and end, kind of thing, for people that are not yet familiar with it?
So we play 20 games in total. It starts. It starts in August and it ends in June, if I remember rightly. However, there's lots of factors in that. We've got postponements, weather, everything else that goes with it. The World Cup in Qatar has thrown a lot of things into doubt as well, just primarily because everything's a bit disrupted at the moment. It's a very weird time. But yeah, it starts and ends in the usual season scope for the men's teams as well. We generally only get 4 or 5 fixtures released at a time from the league at the moment because of referee allocation, pitch allocation, that type of thing. But playing in the stadiums, really helping with that as well.
What sort of crowds are you getting from in Paddingham? Is it sort of noticeable growth that you're seeing?
Yeah, so when we first started in Paddingham, our first gate was 179 and our last gate was, I think, 302. So we're averaging between 250 and 300 at Paddingham now, which is, towards it's a significant number, because that's quite a decent amount of people that are now turning up to watch us consistently and regularly, which is helping massively with the game. Because if you imagine now that as a demographic, if you're getting between 250 and 300, that's actually quite sizable. And what we can do with that is we can help feed that into the Stanley family to help increase that demographic. Because what everybody fails to realise is that 51% of your demographic in the area is female. So actually, if you've got a female team and you've got 170 plus players who all have met family and friends, and then you've also got 250, 300 fans, we can then merge that towards the full Accrington Stanley family and brand and start to bring them to the men's game as well, which is what the OSST are working on with Joe DeBost at the moment.
Yeah. So
we can start, increasing that demographic into the female area, but equally the younger generation as well that's coming through, So, it works both ways.
I saw her walking around the WAM Stadium with a picture frame with a couple of girls in tow, people getting their picture taken in this frame. I can't recall what was on that picture frame, but it was something related to the women's game, wasn't it, Heath?
Yeah, it's the Her Game Too movement.
Oh, that's right. That was it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I saw those. How would you describe the team tactically? What type of football do you play?
Well, this is So you're asking. So football teams are usually split into two areas. You've got the managerial side and the administration side. I do the administration side. I do the digital and tech. So you're asking a digitech guy about football. You're going to get a digitech guy's answer. So what I would say is it's fluid, fast paced, and attacking across the piece. That's what we're aiming to do. The best form of defense.
Okay.
In the past, we used to sit down and we have very specific and defined structures, like 6 seconds with the ball back if we're out of play and those types of things. What we're actually finding now is that we're doing a lot more data analysis. So you don't have one specific way of playing. Who you are playing and who you're playing against plays a big factor in how you play. But the ethos is always there. Transition into attack.
That's interesting.
Keep it there.
Bryn, when he was on the show, wants to play the right, attractive attacking football, and obviously that's probably one of the reasons that attracted Sadie to the team, because obviously she had success when she was healthy, and we're looking forward to her coming back and the team growing. So you like for next,
when you look at the results, it definitely speaks to the team playing an attacking brand of football.
I think everything's positive, right? From Heath's outlook today and Bryn's perspective on the team. I think that's why this success they're having is because of the positive attitude that everybody's bringing to the women's game. So I think hats off to you guys, and we wish you all the success and continued success and good luck going forward, because I think this is a part of the game that really has the sky's the limit as far as growth and potential.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, and we definitely want you to get players on the show in the future to really expand people's knowledge of the women's game, because that's one thing is there's not a whole lot of information out there in terms of top scorers and things like that, and we're going to try and get that information out to people. But one thing I did want to make sure that
be careful what you wish for, Phil. Be careful what you wish for. Honestly. Have you ever seen a training session with 170 plus women and girls?
No.
That will open your eyes. I'm telling you, that is bedlam at a new level.
The one thing I was watching a show the other night, and the one comedian said, the worst thing you want to have against you in the whole world is not an army of men or an army of soldiers. It's a bunch of teenage girls coming against you. So you better be careful what you ask for, because if they've got volume in numbers, Phil.
Well, the biggest thing I wanted Heath to be able to do is tell people where they can find Accrington Stanley Women's FC online. Where can people follow you on Facebook, on Twitter, and all of those places?
All over them. So if you Google Accrington Stanley Women, or if you go to the website aswomen.org, that has all of our social media channels. We do all of our live match commentary through Twitter. If you just search Accrington Stanley Women, you'll find it straight away. Our Facebook page is quite a big place. Our two big ones as well is LinkedIn and then Instagram. So we do a lot of our corporate stuff through LinkedIn for matchday sponsorship and so on and so on.
Live match commentary. You just mentioned something there. So during the matches, people can go to the website and get live updates on what's happening during the games.
Yes, via Twitter. So we live tweet everything that's going on during the game, and that's also repeated in the website as well. So you can watch the games come through. And if you look at our Twitter feed, you will also notice there's a lot that goes on all the way through it, because you've got a lot of social media savvy players that want to get involved, which is quite good, really. Interesting fact for you: after the Tranmere game, where we unfortunately lost on penalties to Tranmere, we were winning 3-1 for a large portion of the game, and then we give away a penalty in the 87th minute and ended up losing directly on penalties. But just after that game, we had a massive amount of interaction on Instagram, so much so that Instagram banned the account.
Oh,
So
wow.
Instagram said, like, you've gone from this many views to 10,000 interactions in a day. You must be a bot. So they banned our account. I'm like, hold on a second, you can't do that. So we're still backwards and forwards with Instagram around that. But yeah, there's a large social media presence across the whole piece. Just search Accrington Stanley Women and you'll find us.
I know there've been a lot of. I've seen a lot of activity, and anytime we get a chance that Bryn puts something on, a result or what have you, we try to promote on our channels, our Facebook and Twitter accounts. So, we want to do what we can to support and see the growth in the women's team. And all the best. And I just thanks for taking the time. And there's a lot of misconceptions or misinformation or lack of information that people may have about the women's team, and I think you've cleared a lot of that up today, Heath, by your answers and explaining how the setup works. So thanks again for doing that.
You're welcome. And next time you're over, you can come to a game, because you can go to the men's game on the Saturday and then the women's game on the Sunday.
Yes. I must admit, I don't know why. For the life of me, I didn't. I know I was busy on the go quite a bit, but I think one of the things that is on my list to do next year is taking a women's game and have a comment or two with Bryn, because I did see him at one of the men's game, but he was introduced in the hospitality lounge. Unfortunately, the MC didn't give him the mic to say a few words, and he didn't get a chance to just to promote the team. But I'm looking forward to I'll definitely taking a match next year. That's for sure.
Absolutely, and once I finally get over to Accrington, I will definitely get you a match as well. I mean, I've got. I think once I finally get to England, I'm going to be nothing but football games for about a month. But I'm also in the show notes. I'm going to put out links for your website and the Facebook and Twitter, and the live match commentary is just fantastic. I mean, I remember before iFollow, that's how I used to follow the men's first team. I mean, I'm 5,000 miles away in Phoenix, Arizona, so that live match commentary is fantastic, and I'm definitely going to make sure that I follow the games through that in the future. And Heath, thank you so much for taking time with us today. And did you have anything you wanted to add that we hadn't asked you about?
No, I think we've covered everything there. It's all good.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, as I said, it's been very informative for me and hopefully for our listeners. And all the best this season and next. And we'll look forward to seeing the women's game next year.
Thanks, guys. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely. And we always finish up with on Stanley on. So 1, 2, 3. On Stanley
on.
On Stanley on.
Cheers.
Cheers, Heath.
Have a great one.
Cheers, guys. See you later.